The COVID-19 crisis has financially affected tens of thousands of Nevadans. We're discussing financial management and resources for you during a time of uncertainty. That's today on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstadt, CASHMAN Equipment, and additional supporting sponsors.
Nevadans have been ordered to stay home for an additional 30 days in the wake of COVID-19. This shutdown has caused many businesses to close their doors, putting tens of thousands of Nevadans out of work. Unemployment claims are at a record high. At time of this recording, 10 million Americans are currently out of work. We sat down with Dr. Tiffany Tyler Gardner, Director of the Nevada Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, to discuss what you need to know when filing for unemployment. Well, we are here with Dr. Tiffany Tyler Gardner, Director of the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, Tiffany. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for having us and affording this opportunity to speak with you in the community about where we are.
Yeah, and let's start with that on where we are. 2 weeks ago, the week ending on March 21st, unprecedented amount of unemployment claims, 92,000 at that time. First off, I just want to ask you, how are you handling this huge demand?
Oh, wow. This truly is unprecedented times. And as a part for the course, we have been formally evaluating what the needs are and adjusting our service delivery accordingly, whether it's staffing up or beefing up our online resources. It's been a concerted effort to work across state agencies and other entities to ensure Nevadans have the support that they need.
Let's talk about just the most recent week here. We mentioned March 21st. Let's go to March 28th, the week that just ended here. Are you seeing the number of claims that we saw the week prior? Or are they starting to level off here?
Well, here's what I can tell you is that after each Thursday, there is a federal release. Per our reporting requirements, we release our information subsequent to that. What I can tell you at this time is that demand continues. What those specific numbers will be, I can speak to in more detail probably after that Thursday requirement, after feds have their first say. But it's important to note that the need is there.
Let's go to the fund itself. There are the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. There's roughly about $2 billion in that. That is, of course, the state allocation we put towards unemployment. Do you think there's any risk of us potentially tapping that entire fund, especially with the federal relief that we are now seeing come into the system?
Well, this is an interesting time. So depending on that guidance and administration, we'll know more about what the potential impacts are. What I can tell you, that as a part of our history as a state, during the recession, we did tap into additional resources to keep that fund solvent, actually paid it back early. So what I will say is as these impacts unfold, that we are closely monitoring that fund balance and have the history of leveraging other resources when we got to a place where we're concerned about the amounts.
Yes, and two key things you mentioned there, of course, is that this is unprecedented. It's very uncertain, and the magnitude, the actual scope and scale of what we're dealing with is something our whole nation, our state has not seen yet. I want to come back to just, let's go to some more of the public information here, and let's talk about if you're an individual and you're trying to file a claim and you can't get through, you're having trouble online and you can't get through, what do you recommend people do at this stage? Is it just kind of a sit and wait, keep calling back? What's your recommendation?
There's a couple of recommendations that we have for folks during this time based on what we've been seeing in the work. So one, we want to encourage individuals to attempt during non-peak hours. There continues to be a significant influx of calls or requests for support at 8 a.m., despite the fact that we have expanded the call hours and they run all the way through 8 p.m. at night. Additionally, we have ensured that all the resources individuals need to file online, because that's the safest, quickest way, are actually online. May I also just note that as folks are wondering about what will become of their claim or what the process will be, here's some assurances that we have for folks, including the fact that No matter when they submit that claim, that it will be backdated and funded from the first day of eligibility. So there's been a lot of scramble, like, oh my gosh, it's been a week now. What happens if I do it next week? Do I miss the week that I was eligible but didn't submit the claim? No, every claim will be backdated to the first date of eligibility and funded.
And Tiffany, final question here. We're talking a lot about the unemployment side of what the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation does. I want to talk about the training and rehabilitation portion of this too. We have a lot of people that are at home and quarantined. There's online resources here to upskill maybe where you're at. And let's talk about not only those that are unemployed, those that are underemployed. What resources do we have available that are online workforce training programs that we might be able to access right now?
Well, there are, let me just say, as it relates to some of these opportunities, in the case of essential businesses, we are finding there are a number of essential functions that are hiring during these times. And our website, Employee Envy, is a place that folks could go as a part of that process. I also want to underscore that traditionally, as a part of the training and rehabilitation, we administer a number of federal sources of support in partnership with our partners like Workforce Connections and Nevada Works that allow for helping individuals to skill up, to grow in terms of salary or opportunities, and also as a part of our Bureau of Rehabilitation, a targeted set of resources for individuals who may have a special need or disability to ensure that they can actively engage in the workforce and competitive employment. So there are a range of resources that are used during these during other times. You know, for example, when our economy was nearly at 3.6 unemployment rate just 4 short weeks ago. It's a part of the work. So there is a whole host of resources in place to help folks who want to skill up. Some of the things that is important to note during this time, because we're asking everyone to stay safe and be safe for Nevada, is that we would encourage folks to make sure that if they're considering training during this downtime, that they look for online options and on the websites of Nevada Works and Workforce Connections and DETR find information about opportunities in training. That information is typically listed on a list called the Eligible Training Providers List. That is the list of training opportunities that we are able to federally subsidize for individuals who qualify.
And as you said, a lot has changed just in the last several weeks. And thank you so much for all the detail you've provided. We really appreciate it. Dr. Tiffany Tyler Gardner, thank you so much for your time. Whether you are filing for unemployment or still on payroll, managing finances can be difficult during these uncertain times. We spoke with Jerry Merritt, Division CRA and Community Development Manager for Bank of Nevada, and Linda Hashef, Executive Director of Opportunity Alliance Nevada, about smart financial planning. Well, Jerry, Linda, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Linda, I wanted to start with you. Opportunity Alliance is on the front lines. You're really looking at what financial supports Nevadans need when we're kind of in a normal stage. Of course, we're not in a normal stage anymore with COVID. What are some of the biggest challenges that you are seeing right now?
So some of the biggest challenges we're seeing with our, Nevada population is, I think it's true across the nation, is the ever-changing information people are getting. So one day they might hear you don't pay your mortgage and there's a relief effort, or the next day you could not pay it, but it's tacked on the back end. So, really important information for people to have, and keeping that accurate, current, and updated so that we're providing all the correct and accurate resources is probably the biggest challenge.
Now, Jerry, I want to ask you the same question. Linda's exactly right. I mean, we have so much information that's changing almost on a daily basis. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing as well?
Well, I would also agree with Linda that it's changing and there's not enough details with it, because you can constantly turn on your television from listening to our president in Washington, D.C. making announcements down to our governor making announcements. I think what we really need here is more details to go with the information that is being put out to the public.
And without the information, we are still dealing with an incredible amount of individuals that are unemployed right now. The most recent data, 10 million nationwide. We have federal relief coming, but the other piece of this, of course, in addition to news completely changing on a daily basis, is that this is going to take time for the money to come in, even for unemployment to come in. On top of that, Jerry, we also have a very high rate of families living paycheck to paycheck. If you have no money coming in right now, you haven't been able to access unemployment, let's say, and you are unemployed or you think you might be unemployed, what do we do? What's the key advice you can give?
Well, I would suggest to a family to take a look at the budget that they're working with already. And I know with most families that live paycheck to paycheck, there is no savings. Okay, but most of us within the last 3 weeks or so, 3 weeks or so, will have that last paycheck. And I would say take that last paycheck and budget it as close to survival as you possibly can until you can start to get some other funds coming in.
Now, normal ratios, when we're talking again about kind of a normal budgeting cycle here, 50% for essentials, your housing, your utilities, your transportation, 30% for non-essentials, 20% for savings and debt repayment. How do those ratios then change when we're dealing with a crisis like we are right now?
Well, actually, those ratios went out the window the moment that your paycheck actually stopped. So now you're at the point where you're actually looking at how do you help your family survive? I know with all this information out there on how do you pay your mortgage, how do you pay your bills, yes, all of that is important, but I think the number one importance right now is to help your family survive. And that is keeping a roof over their head to make sure they stay home from Nevada. And then, of course, making sure there's food on your table and the other necessities.
And to do that, let's say that you've kind of used that last paycheck. You don't have unemployment coming in yet. You're in kind of an emergency situation here. What kind of short-term lending is available?
Well, I think lending is a word that we probably shouldn't even be thinking of right now because in order to lend, you also have to borrow. And of course, if you do not have a job, it is almost impossible to be able to borrow unless you're borrowing from a family member. But at the same time, because we are strong in Nevada, we do have other community organizations such as United Way. And there have been many of our large corporations that are making donations, including the state of Nevada, that is making donations to United Way so that families that are in need like this, no money, can actually come and actually apply for funds that they can get immediately.
So instead of looking for cash, so to speak, we have resources available that could kind of displace what most of our costs on a daily basis are through these resources. That's a great point. And Linda, I want to talk about Opportunity Alliance of Nevada here as well. As we mentioned, the federal state relief is coming. But in addition to that, some of the challenges are that just navigating how these benefits are and how you access those could be an additional challenge. And as you already mentioned, at the beginning of our segment here, they're changing daily. What kind of resources are Opportunity Alliance of Nevada then providing?
That's a really good question. And what Opportunity Alliance Nevada is doing right now is pulling together a current daily updated resource list that comes a little bit from weekly calls we have with other stakeholders throughout the state. And almost a representative from every elected official's office participates as well, so we can try to be updated federally. But we are not trying to duplicate anybody else's efforts. What we're trying to do is be another avenue with a conversation for folks who are struggling through the process. And that might even include how to fill out, your small business loan application if English isn't your first language. So we're really trying to touch on all the points that are barriers or pain points for some folks and address them.
Linda, we don't all have Jerry, unfortunately, here at our disposal to get this sage advice. What resources are available then to have a one-on-one connection with somebody that can maybe provide some of that guidance and also some of the advice that you're talking about here?
So Opportunity Alliance has pivoted our entire agency efforts towards the financial fallout from the COVID-19 crisis. And one of those new program developments is our volunteer financial navigator services, where folks can, there's a few ways to access that service, but so they can actually have a conversation and maybe say, I tried that, it didn't work, or there's, I can't get a response from this agency. And we might have some answers for them. And it might only be, look, we know there's a 2-week lag, but keep trying, apply on this platform too. So that's the navigation piece, is trying to help them get through it with actually being able to talk to another human being.
Let's look beyond the current crisis we are right now. Let's look ahead past, and now we're kind of in more of a recovery phase. Obviously, our economy is going to be recovering as well. What can we do now as far as financial planning to make sure that we are as prepared and positioned as we can to kind of deal with recovery when this is all over?
I would say we should go back to what we initially started talking about, and that was that budget. Because you have the money in your hand, and because we know that there are vehicles out there to assist you with your mortgage and with your credit cards and even with your student loans, when all of this is said and done, that money is still going to be owed. So I would say now is the time to start managing your budget so that once we're finished with this crisis, that we will still have the monies that are needed to be able to catch up on your mortgage, catch up on any other loans that you may have out there. I think one of the biggest mistakes that could be made during this crisis is that we get this help, we do not use the money wisely, and once this is passed, we are in worse shape than we were while we were in the crisis.
Well, let's talk about some of these resources then more specifically. Linda, for one thing, you mentioned the volunteer financial navigators, also the resource page. How do we as potential recipients of some of these services access those?
Good question. So we have a website that is complete with all the pieces of our new programming. And you can actually go to the website and volunteer to be a navigator. You can request to be matched with a navigator. But there will also be options for phone calls and texting for those folks we know who may not have Wi-Fi or tech capabilities.
Yeah. If you want to be a volunteer for the Volunteer Financial Navigator, what kind of skills or background or experience are you looking for here?
So we really are just looking for folks that are comfortable with talking to others, but also have access to Wi-Fi, email, and a phone. And we will be training them and updating them, like I said, a daily resource update and debriefings daily. So we are, like we said, information changing all the time. So we will keep them updated daily, but their skill set does not have to be strong financial backgrounds. It's more about wanting to help and the ability to talk with others.
And then, Jerry, outside of what Opportunity Alliance is doing in the banking community here, are there resources that we should be accessing, whether we are a member or have a checking account in a bank or don't?
Well, I would say if you have any type of a checking account or any type of relationship with the bank at all, you need to be speaking to your banker, especially if you have a credit card, if you have a loan, if you have a mortgage. This is the time to be reaching out. Do not wait until your financial institution reach out to you, either for a late payment or discuss how things are going to be paid. This is a time that you should actually be reaching out. I know I am one of those that over the years really didn't care for 1-800 numbers, but now is the time to pick those numbers up, call, try to see if you can get into your bank and actually have a conversation. One of the things that I would caution, especially the consumers, we were already challenged with our payday loans and other types of vehicles before the crisis. I would caution you to be very careful before approaching these type of institutions to get money that will be very, very hard for you to pay back once we're finished with this crisis.
Yeah, wonderful advice. We're out of time. Jerry, Linda, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. With schools closed and thousands out at work, Three Square of Southern Nevada has been working hard to ensure all Nevadans stay fed. We spoke with Chief Operating Officer Larry Scott about the nonprofit's efforts. Well, we are here with Larry Scott, the Chief Operating Officer of Three Square. Larry, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So I wanted to talk a little bit just about the emergency food plan that you've put together very early on in the threat of COVID-19. I know Three Square put together this food plan. Can you talk and walk us through just what the key provisions of this plan are?
Well, several big keys. One is to be able to maintain social distancing, and so that's been paramount in how we've gone about redefining the distribution plan that we have. So because of that, we had to reduce down from 180 plus partners down to just 10 partners, and then we also have added 24 different distribution sites that Three Square ourselves are making, and we are doing those all by drive up. And so somebody will just simply drive up, open their trunk, and we'll put the food in the trunk, and away they go. They don't ever leave the car. So that's the biggest change that has taken place.
And then for those that want to know where the most updated information is for distribution sites, what do you recommend? Is it just going to the Three Square website?
Absolutely. threesquare.org/help will be able to give you the full map. It'll show you the 43 emergency sites. And it's important to know too that we still have 9 partners that have pantries. So if you are a walk-up, you do not have access to a car, there is still an access that is available to you at one of those 9 pantries to be able to receive food from.
Gotcha. And for those that don't have web access, is there a number they can call and get kind of a list or some guidance on what the closest would be?
Sure. They can call 702-644-3663. And our call center at Three Square will help you. And in fact, our call center is receiving probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000 calls a month right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And they're directing people to all types of human services. And so if you have a need, you can certainly call the Three Square line and be able to receive direction for help, or we can be able to assist you specifically from the emergency distribution sites that we have.
Just wanted to ask you, supply and demand here, how are you faring? I mean, are we getting the amount of food in that we need for distribution right now?
Well, that's a story that changes every day. Last week, when the governor announced that the casinos were going to be closing overnight, they had coolers and freezers and pantries full of food that they needed to get out of those properties.
Yeah.
And so that food came in extraordinary volumes, well in excess of 300 pallets of food. Now the playing field levels out a little bit, and now we're back to normal sourcing opportunities. We receive food from basically 4 different opportunities that we have. We have grocery rescue, which we continue to rescue from the grocery stores. We have donated food that come in from many different types and national wholesalers. We have federal commodities, we are receiving a large amount of federal commodities, and we hope that amount will increase. And then we also have purchased food. Purchased food historically has been the least desired line for us because it's the most expensive, although we have tremendous buying power. And so what we're having to do right now to be able to fill the excess demand that has been created is we're having to go to that purchase line. And so 2 important things there. One, we're having to go to purchase food. And secondly, we need funding to be able to do that, to be able to get that food acquired.
Now, on a normal operation schedule, you're talking about a lot of volunteers that are necessary to run what Three Square does. Now we're talking about an emergency crisis, and we're dealing with things like social distancing and like you mentioned, a lot of non-essential business closures. Your CEO, Brian Burton, sent a letter urging healthy volunteers to still come in. Is that still an active request?
No, we had to change that. We suspended all volunteer activity at Three Square Now we simply ask our volunteers if they will go online to 3square.org and sign up to be able to participate at these outdoor drive-through environments where we are very much respecting social distancing, both with the volunteers and with the clients.
Well, let's talk about the public, our viewership here. What can we do right now to help an organization like 3Square?
Well, it's not in my nature to hold my hand out very often. I'm not entirely comfortable with that. But for this particular experience now, and this has changed from what I might have, how I might have answered this 3 weeks ago. Today, purchased food is going to be essential for us. We need funding. We need to be able to add to the federal commodities. We need to be able to add to the grocery rescue and the donated food. And so the only other avenue that's available to us is to actually purchase the food. Please understand that we have tremendous buying power and resources, and so we can stretch that dollar very far, but we need funding to be able to accomplish that.
And Larry, if we want to donate, how do we do that?
3square.org. There's a very user-friendly website to be able to give you an opportunity to choose any kind of options to be able to help support this cause.
Well, Larry Scott from 3Square, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
Well, thank you for watching today's program. Now, for more information about any of the resources that we discussed today, please visit our website at vegaspbs.org/Nevada-Week. You can also find us on social media at Nevada Week.